The Mannin Line, daily interaction, debate and exchange of ideas. Broadcast on Manx Radio from midday till 1, Monday to Friday.
Faster by, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Through till 1, we're open line today. So whatever you'd like to chat about, by all means, get in touch. Text 166 177, WhatsApp 166 177. Although you'll have to put us in your contacts. Email studio@manxradio.com or call 66 13 68. So what do you think of this Department for Enterprise project to temporarily remove the requirement for work permits across all sectors and all occupations? Enterprise say that there was a recent public consultation. The department says support was given for the proposals. October, the sitting of Tynwald, they're not quite saying what's going to happen, how temporary it's going to be, or what's going to happen if somebody's given a temporary exemption from the work permit, whether or not they just slip into the system anyway afterwards. The Enterprise Minister, Tim Johnston, reckons that the existing system works well for the majority of employers and applicants, with consistently around 70% of applications for work permits approved within the same or next working day. But a significant proportion and a perception, there are perception issues around the system, including new residents being faced with a level of uncertainty in the initial stages and for the following 5 years. They say that the consultation had 250 responses. Got any thoughts on this? Exactly how we what we do where this is concerned? Do you think the work permit system is good for the Isle of Man? Does it maintain the image of the Isle of Man, if you like? Does it make sure that people can't just turn up here and expect to either sign on to the dole or just turn up anyway? Anyway, thoughts on it, by all means, get in touch. Richie says, Andy, in 1913, we attracted a record 635,000 visitors. Douglas had the world's biggest ballroom, the Palace, the Derby Castle, the Falcon Cliff, the Grand, the Gaiety Theatres, the Bellevue, the Villa, Fort Anne, Circus, Waxworks, Diorama, bandstands, fun fairs, arcades, amusements, Cunningham's holiday camps and others as well. Towns had pavilions, gardens, cafes and boating lakes. We had Port Sodrick, Glenwillan, Glen Helen, Faulty Will, Rushen Abbey, Groudle Glen. We needed 17 Manx boats. The railways laid on boat trains. Tourism was our heritage. We need something entirely new and exceptional to attract those levels. Can't think what, says Richie. Prior to, and I think the apotheosis, I think you're quite right, Richard, the record for visitors was prior to World War I. So, in essence, we've been going down since the beginning of the First World War. So quite what we do to attract those visitors, and it was mentioned yesterday, just having to have stuff for visitors to do. We've got a beautiful new boat. She looks gorgeous. Nobody's travelled on her yet. But apart from the crew, so we'll see what happens. My memory just goes back to 1998 as I sat in this seat and talked about the arrival of the brand new Ben McCree. She wasn't, how can I put it tactfully, she wasn't universally popular when she first arrived. But we've grown to love her, and now she's been superseded by the Manxman. But this whole perception of who is going to come to the Isle of Man and what we're going to give them when they come here, times have changed. Times have really, really changed. And if you look at some of the UK visitor destinations that may be akin to the Isle of Man, if it's the Lake District or if it's North Yorkshire, Harrogate perhaps, or if it's Snowdonia, what can we offer? Perhaps the Peak District. What can we offer that those people also offer, but with added value? And if you can help, then I suggest you write to Visit Isle of Man and give him your opinion. And a note in from, this was regarding EasyJet, this hell take just goes on and on and on, doesn't it? My family of 3 were notified at 5 a.m. that by EasyJet, this was yesterday, that the flight to Gatwick was cancelled, then had to book flights on Loganair to London City at great expense. It was very stressful as they're flying on from there. EasyJet are a joke, but not a very funny one. And just to add to that as well, there was a train strike in the UK. Thanks for that point of view. And again, this is something that we just have to get out of. This situation with the airport. Obviously, Mr. Thomas, the infrastructure minister, has got this and other things on his plate, and quite how we get out of it. We're in a situation where we don't have enough air traffic controllers. We're hamstrung by having 2 main operators, really, the main EasyJet and Loganair. Loganair seem to be doing their very best and were of great help during COVID. To a minor extent, we have Aer Lingus, but really we are tied to EasyJet and to Loganair, and people aren't beating a path to our door, and I don't think there will be if they see the air traffic control cover. So we're caught in the middle of all this, and how we negotiate our way out of it. Well, at the moment, the best way to get out of it, apparently we've got green and red zones at the airport car park. So... 2 new improved prices. If we drop the work permit, there has to be a massive criminal check, surely, involved on anyone coming here. It could ruin our way of life. It could be irreparable, says Paul. You would expect, and I don't know the complete ins and outs, but anybody coming here, surely, if they're coming for a job, will have to be checked. Would that be right? Who are the honoured guests that Tynwald's invited, the overseas guests for tomorrow's ceremony? Was the Sovereign invited, says Andy? I would imagine that King Charles was invited, but I think he's been around to most places, but it's not been announced, put it this way. It's not been announced if King Charles will be with us tomorrow, but we wait and see. However, I will tell you there will be a Radio Caroline DJ. One of Radio Caroline North's first DJs will be coming to our Tynwald ceremony tomorrow. In fact, it may be the first time he's been to the Isle of Man since he was here in 1964 into 1965. Roger Gale was a DJ on Radio Caroline North in 1964 and 1965. He became a Tory MP, and he's remained a Tory MP since the 1980s. Sir Roger Gale is one of our guests tomorrow. So maybe he's got a few records left over from his days in the 60s. The work permits should not be abolished, temporarily or otherwise, says Texter 117. We need this control over our immigration. There's no reason why anyone will be refused if they are genuine. There must be control, says Lisa. Enterprise hasn't said which particular sectors are struggling. Certainly hospitality struggles for personnel. Perhaps the care home sector is struggling for personnel. So how do we get around this? If people want, and it's been often anecdotally quoted that there's a shortage of labour on the Isle of Man, how do we get round there? And if these work permits are going to be temporarily suspended, will the people who get the temporarily suspended work permits have them, if you like, retrofitted retrospectively, or will they have to apply again? So much for getting out of the EU. More cheap foreign labour who don't know our culture or speak our language, says TJ. I don't know how to break this to you, TJ, but the Isle of Man's never been in the EU, so couldn't really get out of the EU, but there we are. Nicola says, Andy, for the work permit board, mustn't open it up at all. That's a massive mistake for people on the Isle of Man. We don't want constant comers and goers. All it will do is make landlords richer. I hugely recommend all our family children are automatically issued jobs at the end of the Year 11 school exams. Use the work permit department to become the work department. Each class, each child would have a designated school to work buddy. give our school leavers better assistance and keep them here. UCM day release or night courses, and lastly, university can be later in their early 20s. They'd have family backup, the same community upbringing, same local values, and our government to help provide new home assistance to their children if one parent was born on the Isle of Man. Please don't open the floodgates without passports, says Nicola. I just wonder what your thoughts on this. They're thinking of temporarily suspending the work permit system. 700 says madness to do away with work permits, temporary or permanent. This is going to just open the door to undesirables. The work permit allows the government to monitor arrivals, and that's what it should do. Thank you, Wendy. And she says, Andy, I'm thinking of driving. I'm going abroad this summer to Europe. What's the situation for driving in Europe? Well, since the United Kingdom left the European Union, there have been changes to the rules about driving on the continent. I don't know whether you're aware of this. And in some instances, if you have an Isle of Man licence and not a UK driving licence, you may need an international permit. Our man who's always in Europe is Dave Moore.
To drive in most European countries, the situation is the same as pre-Brexit. However, there are exceptions. If you hold a UK licence, then you can drive in Germany without needing an international permit. But if your documentation was issued in the Isle of Man, then, according to the United Kingdom government's website, you may need what's known as a 1968 IDP. They advise you check with the German embassy before travelling. The same advice applies to anyone with a Manx licence to check before driving in Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Hungary, Malta and Romania. They also recommend if you're hiring a car, then check with the company you're booking the vehicle from if you need a permit. As the Isle of Man isn't covered by the 1968 Convention on Road Traffic, and not all European countries are party to the 1949 Convention on Road Traffic, which does apply to the island, a permit issued to the holder of a Manx driving licence may not guarantee the right to drive in European countries. An international driving permit costs £11 and is issued by the Post Office and may take a few weeks to be processed. Meanwhile, anyone driving in Europe on a Manx number plate is required to display a black and white oval GBM sticker on the rear of their vehicle.
So I hope that cleared it all up. I hope you're fine with driving in Europe, and don't blame me if you get pulled over. We've got a new boat, the Steam Packet. Can anyone explain to me why it's not being crewed by locals instead of being crewed by, apparently, and we don't know, but this correspondent 223 says that the crew is Filipino. If so, there are lots of UK redundant seafarers. Why can't they be employed? So is that true? Didn't know that. When the government misses its target, says 313, I can see hundreds of migrants being imported from the UK and housed in the Isle of Man, says G. We haven't had a kind of definitive situation of what's going to happen with the work permit. So temporarily suspended is what Tim Johnston, the Enterprise Minister, said, and that's going to October Tynwald. So we have until October to chew that one over. I don't know what the problem is with stopping work permits. The idea that you can give a job unconditionally to a Manx candidate, I think is laughable, says Texter 475, especially when other candidates may be better suited and willing to do the work. It's not as if immigrants to the Isle of Man can access benefits either. So really, it's work or go home. When my family moved to the Isle of Man in the 1960s, says Texter 300, we stayed while the work permit named on his remit was available, but we had to return to the UK when that particular work ceased for the year. I think it should continue in that manner, says Bob. Well, we'll be getting into the detail. I was in Portugal 2 months ago, hired a car with my Manx licence, says Des. And did you have a good time? Thank you for that. Nobody quite seems to know, by the way. We've got lots of photos of what's happening on the Manxman at the moment. She's got some inflatables by the side. Whether they're practicing evacuation, we don't know. But we'll see anyway. have you seen the headline on today's Examiner? Police using food banks while the government finds money for vanity projects, says Texter 653. Well, there was that story. Have you seen the story about it was Gary Roberts, the former chief constable, says that tackling the significant issue of police officers' pay on the Isle of Man is going to be very difficult. Gary Roberts, the last chief constable, just published his report, and it basically says that they're on the verge of a crisis. Another crisis. Police officers are angrier than I've ever seen them because of the pay, not because of what they do, but just because of the pay. Recent changes to the pay of teachers by the Department of Education, Sport and Culture to lift their salary to £10,000 more than a police constable has angered police officers. Gary Roberts sent a letter to Department of Home Affairs just to say that he understood the pressures faced by the government. The situation had actually deteriorated since that decision was taken to establish a working party into it. But apparently Gary Roberts said that police officers shouldn't have to rely on overtime, they shouldn't be using food banks, and they shouldn't have to buy second-hand toys for their children at Christmas. Well, obviously the new Chief Constable, Russ Foster, is going to be in the middle of all this. Obviously Jane Paul Wilson from Home Affairs and Treasury. But it seems, just like David Ashford was saying last week on Mannin Line, that really we are approaching some rough waters, or perhaps we're even in them now. And certainly what's going to happen at the end of this financial year will have consequences for everybody. Heaven knows, it could be even the unthinkable of putting tax up. Julian's on now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Yes, gazing out at the Manxman.
Oh, yes. Yes, it looks quite impressive there, doesn't it?
Well, she is, how can I put it kindly, she is a chunky little thing, and I think she's one articulated lorry wider each side than the Ben was, so it'll be fun getting into the harbour in a southwesterly force 7.
It's a shame we can't go and have a look at it. I seem to remember when the Ben first arrived, didn't it tie up at Port St Mary and people could get on and have a look at it? Years and years and years ago, before it resumed service, started service.
Well, we've asked the question to the steam packet whether or not, in fact, we'd love to take Mannin Line on the Manxman, but as yet we haven't heard. Maybe they're just bedding it in at the moment.
Yeah. Just a quick comment on the work permit thing. If you want a comparison, perhaps, you've got to have a look at what happened to Sweden over 20 years ago. Because Sweden shared something with the Isle of Man, and that was the safety ranking in the world. And currently the Isle of Man is at number 4, and Sweden was roughly about the same, between 3 and 4. They then opened the taps on immigration then. They are now currently at number 85. They're worse than Morocco, Sudan, Iraq, Ukraine, and Egypt in terms of safety. And part of the problem for that is a small population of 4 million inundated with people coming in without really any kind of filtration, you might say. And if you look at the Isle of Man, we've got 84,500 on the island at the moment. If you increase it by 15,000, that's about an 18% increase. That would be like putting 12 million extra people into the UK. So you've got to wonder, that's quite a large inundation, especially if there's no sort of talk about is there going to be merit involved? What is this? It seems to be going hand in hand with this open-ended removal of the work permit system.
I just wonder, if they give us some numbers, it will be interesting to know whether or not they say, is it going to be 50, 100, 200, 300, 400, 1,000? How many people are they thinking of letting in without a work permit? Which particular industries are involved? And what does it, what's it going to mean for us? How long will this temporary suspension last? That's what interests me.
Yeah, and it's not really something that should be bandied about with any vagueness. There should be exact parameters for exactly what this means. But if you've got somewhere like Sweden, which is sort of like-minded with us, I mean, even now, if you look in the political Swedish online magazines, they're so fed up with it now. The likes of Rinkeby, where the police don't even go anymore because they get firebombed. Something similar to Molenbeek. You remember some time ago, you had a nightclub that was attacked by somebody in Belgium, and then he retreated into Molenbeek, which is something similar, a sort of what you might say a separate little enclave outside of Brussels.
Well, certainly. I mean, as you say, there's evidence, lots of evidence about what's been happening, particularly in the south of Sweden, in Skåne in the south, and obviously. When you get immigration, when you get people from different cultures and customs and identities and nations, it's often very invigorating. I mean, it's happened over time, but sometimes there is a downside, and that really shouldn't be overlooked. So it will be interesting to see exactly what happens and in which particular industries the work permit will be rescinded, or whether it's going to be across the board.
You've also got ever-increasing regulation on a lot of industries on the island, making it more and more difficult. But this is the thing, this is going to perhaps influence people who work locally from here, which is seen in other jurisdictions as well. There's so many questions here. I think there needs to be a much more focused look at the parameters of what exactly is this. You can't be, sort of vague as to what's going on with this. Not really.
Well, we'll see. Okay, Julian, appreciate your call. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
All right, 28 minutes past 12. No Mannin Line tomorrow because it's Tynwald Day. It's our national day. However, I will be with you tomorrow morning, and your politicians as they arrive at Tynwald for the ceremony, chatting to as many politicians as I can get to. And by the way, if you've got any questions you'd like me to ask the politicians, can't promise I'm going to get to everybody. We'll get the roving microphone round as many as possible tomorrow morning outside the church at St John's. Looking forward to it, and I'm ready with a polythene bag to put over my top hat. Mark's with us now. Hi, Mark.
Hello there, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Good stuff. Frequent listener, infrequent caller. But I think people are getting slightly alarmist about this announcement about the work permit relaxation. Previously, I've been involved in businesses. I've tried to recruit people over here. Work permit system, whilst it works, it's extremely expensive and laborious to negotiate and navigate. Relaxation, personally, see it as a massively good thing. And to some of the people who are being all alarmist about the massive tidal wave of immigrants we're going to get if it is relaxed, they've got to remember the clues in the name. Work permit. And these people are also a lot of the people who complain about the cost of living over here. People who come over here after removal of any work permit restrictions will be looking for work. As a lot of the complainers have stated, it's very expensive over here. Cost of living is very, very high. The people that come over here won't be able to afford to stay here unless they get a job. And let's face it, we need an active population over here to fill the lots of vacancies that we have. So stop worrying about it, people.
Did you have particular problems recruiting personnel? Well,
absolutely, yes. We had significant problems recruiting personnel, and when we could recruit personnel, there was the big question mark always surrounding wives/husbands, and there was then a number of years ago the relaxation for partners, because, for example, you could have a very, very highly qualified lawyer, for argument's sake, coming over here to work. If their partner was a qualified accountant and didn't have a work permit, for example, they would have to leave their job in the UK to come over here. And there was a risk that they wouldn't actually get a job or a work permit. So, calm down, people. credit employers with the intelligence they must have to run businesses to actually do proper background checks on people before they employ them. And be assured that nobody's going to want to employ somebody who's going to be a notable criminal or whatever. And please look at the employment situation on the Isle of Man. We're crying out for people to work and contribute to national insurance, contribute tax, all that kind of stuff, because we know the government's running on its reserves at the moment, so we need more money coming into the system. Another quick point I want to make, and it relates to the assisted dying bill.
Yeah.
Some people have been on... I have personal experience about this in relation to my mother. I spoke to Beth on the show about a year ago about it. She had a do not resuscitate request in her when she had a will, but there wasn't machinery keeping her alive at the time, so there wasn't... They couldn't switch off machinery, so to speak. So I would say to some of these people who are saying, assisted suicide, how about looking at the other perspective that people like I would have in relation to, keeping them alive, that's assisted torture. If you've got to keep somebody drugged in order to suppress their pain, and their wish was to die, but, there's no machine keeping them alive in order to switch off to keep their will. No, you're assisting torture by actually keeping them in a position they wouldn't want to be in. And I'll emphasise again what I said to Beth at the time. A farmer would be put in prison for keeping animals in the state that my mother was kept in. We have all these laws about cruelty to animals, prevention of harm of all this to animals. Humans are animals. Where's our compassion for our own kind?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate
That's
it.
what I want to say.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay,
No
Mark,
problem.
thanks for calling today. It's good to hear from you. Got a message in. Apparently, the steam packet has said the Manxman's going through Isle of Man maritime inspections to check that she's seaworthy. This is also to put the crews through their pace and to see that they comply with all the regulations. So that's what's happening. And it's Spectator City here at Douglas Head. There are hundreds of people every day taking photos of the new boat, as ever was. 27 minutes to 1. David's on now. Hi, David.
Hi, Randy. Just regarding the work permit situation and temporary suspending it. The word is temporary. Now, you hit the nail on the head there. What's going to happen later on? Somebody, an expectation comes here, has a job, gets accommodation or whatever, or even buys a house. You know what the price of houses are on the Isle of Man. And I just wonder whether we're giving some people false hope, whether they could be employment here. I know there's employment at I'm not calling it the lower end of the scale, but you know what I mean, the non-skilled side.
Yeah.
We need lots of people, even tradesmen now, slowly diminishing. We're not filling the apprentices in and so forth. And I just wonder, the biggest one I had was when I was in Parliament is where they come from, and are the checks done to make sure that the citizens that we'd want to reside in the Isle of Man. And just quick...
Sorry, go on.
Go on. I was going to flip to something else, but you say something. Go on.
No, it's just about the fact that with the finance industry being so prevalent on the Isle of Man and e-gaming, it is relatively easy. I'm not saying you just have to have 2 arms and 2 legs, but our young people can get up to £30,000 a year relatively easy. So that makes those, if you like, those semi-skilled and lower-skilled jobs unwanted by our own children and young people, David.
Yeah, and everybody wants to be a computer person, be in a bank and stuff like that. I'd say to youngsters out there, get a trade, get a skill under your belt. You'll enjoy life working in the industry. And just hitting it on the head too, the planning committee have proved, my God, they've made a decision on Cunningham's Camp.
Yes.
And putting in a headquarters there and a great development. And I just wondered how long that company's been waiting for that to be done.
Years.
And be given the green light. like the other places there, Poodle, I'm not saying Poodle down Dara, but down there they're going to come in with another application for a hotel there. People have got to realise we've got to move on with stuff. Do we want to see buildings just sitting there like derelict stuff?
Okay.
But at least it was good on this one, and it's going to create quite a few jobs. I just wonder when it's going to start.
All right. Thanks, David.
See you, boy. Cheers.
Now, 24 minutes. Maybe they should call it Cunningham's Camp, this new campus that they're building on Victoria Road for King Gaming. It's going to be Cunningham's Camp. I can't believe the government's desperate to get workers to pay for their massive pensions. 692 as well. We're off to Europe for a break to explore these new things, such as the new legislation and education into the new tobacco products and the taboo surrounding cannabis and cannabinoids as well. The hospitality and cafe dispensaries would thrive if we sorted out the drug culture stigma so it can be regulated by our government. Let's look at Germany's new legislation in cannabis products, says texter 602, and 692 says suspending the work permit system surely will open the door to illegals coming here and working for cash, says Dave. And again, we'll find out more, well, certainly when the Tynwald sits in October, what this is going to mean. I don't know whether you saw, but there was some talk on Twitter the other night. I think it was one of the people who runs the fish yard in Peel saying they simply couldn't run the fish processing without, and he mentioned by name, Filipinos, by members of the Filipino nation who are on the Isle of Man, simply because his words were, locals don't want to work in the fish yard. And the workers that he had who were Filipino were extremely hard-working and happy to have the job. And when people are working in the finance sector, people can leave school, get into the finance sector and very quickly start earning high salaries. Then how are we going to fill low-skilled, semi-skilled works? And as David said, everybody needs tradespeople. Have you tried finding a plumber lately? The work permits have stopped. The work permits of the staff of the work permit department are being redistributed, says Rob. There's lots of UK and European vans here carrying out work. The government should be helping local companies develop. When all the local small businesses have gone under, where's the dole money going to come from? The government doesn't even shop local, says Rob. So will there be no work permits? Let's have a look at this. Have you seen the state of France? That's a bit of a leap, says Sam. I don't think we're going to be getting illegal immigrants over here. They're just talking about relaxing the work permit legislation. And a message in, can you tell me what's going to happen to the Ben McCree, says Texter 663. Well, she's staying on the fleet. We're not losing the Ben McCree, and it's weird. I don't know whether if you were either in Douglas Head yesterday or you've seen the videos. The Ben McCree coming in alongside the Manxman. It's almost like the new Pretender has taken the throne. Our new boats here, and the Ben McCree, which has been, as I mentioned, 25 years ago, was not an unalloyed success. A lot of people hated the Ben McCree. She was basically a freighter with passenger accommodation on top, and it was quite bouncy on the top in the early days, although they remedied a lot of the problems. And we've got to love the Ben McCree over 25 years. She's been an extremely faithful, hard-working vessel with goes out in all weathers and 364 days a year has done great service for us. She is staying on the fleet. I understand that she will be used in times of TT and things like that, but I understand will possibly be leased out to other organisations, much like, do you remember the Lady of Man used to be leased out in the summer and came back with Portuguese writing all over her. She was in the Azores every summer. But the Ben McCree will be with us. It'd be nice to spot where she's going to be when she's leased out as well. The work permits, the news that government's considering changing the system is no surprise, says Ian. I feel this is going to be the thin end of the wedge and a retrograde step for Manx people. Do we want to end up like the Native Americans? Second-class citizens in our own country, says Ian. And Patrick's with us now. Hi, Patrick.
Hello, Andy. Andy, the comment you made about I can't see illegal immigrants coming over here. Well, they're all technically minded now. They've all got their phones and their internet. And if they're in England and they can't find any work there, and they know the Isle of Man's such a lovely place to come, there's nothing to stop them at all coming over. There's no work permit.
As Mark said, Patrick, this is going to depend on employers, isn't it?
Well, that's putting someone responsibility. If I was a builder and I needed labourers or a joiner or a plasterer or whatever it is, I wouldn't be vetting them that hard. I'm sorry to say, you're there to make money, and that's all there is to it in business.
If these people come and work in the system and they're PAYE, but they'll have to register, will know NI numbers and will know everything.
Yeah, but you'll know everything, but there's nothing to stop. There's nothing to stop them getting a false document or whatever it is. It's really hard to verify who's legal and who's not legal these days.
So do you think this is a good or bad? Is this a good or bad idea, Patrick? I
think the work permit should be maybe not as strict as it used to be. People going about Manx people and that, but I'm Manx. I'm 3 generations Manx, but I like anybody to have a job if they're good workers. It's you pick what you want. You're the employer. You pick what you want as far as the work is concerned in this day and age.
Well, we'll see. Okay, thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, Andy.
Good to hear from you. Phil, says Andy, this is a retrograde step. The relaxation of the work permit's the first step on the road to the decimation of the Manx culture and the way of life by the most left-wing Tynwald there has ever been. I don't know about that. There used to be quite a lot of Manx labour in Tynwalds in times gone by, in Keys certainly. And thank you regarding the Manxman, all the crew working on the new boat apparently have to live for 2 weeks on board. Well, I've noticed there's an enormous amount of facility on board for the crew, so they apparently have to live on board for 2 weeks of duty. I saw a photo yesterday. They've actually got their own gym on board. Very nice. So those that live on the Isle of Man can't go home for 2 weeks. I didn't know that was true. We'll find out for certain about that. Dropping the work permit, says Betty, would be a disaster for the Isle of Man. I appreciate we need more young people here, but encouraging Manx youngsters to work here is a better way forward. I urge the government not to do this. I agree we are a safe environment here, and we'd be more than foolish to endanger this. And oftentimes, too, temporary functions become permanent. I urge them not to do this. Norman's on now. Hi, Norman.
Yeah, all it is I've just been through St John's this morning. I see they're getting ready for Tynwald, and I thought it's in very poor condition. There's a lot of weeds about everywhere under the curbs and on the footpaths and everything. And I remember how it used to be so Prince down on Tynwald Day, and up by the football club where the hedge there's the pavement's very narrow, and when you walk on it you get caught on brambles and things.
So nobody's been tidying up. Whereabouts are the weeds then? Are they by the crossroads?
Just as by the football club there, where the junction is opposite the Patrick Road Junction.
But maybe they'll do it this. Maybe they'll do it this afternoon, Norman.
Yeah, I doubt it very much.
Okay.
And the general tidiness of the place. There's weeds on the footpaths, down the edges of the carriageways and under the curbs and everywhere. It's very untidy. Yeah.
Okay.
Very poor show.
All right. Thanks, Norman. Okay. Good to hear from you. Maybe they're calling it the Tynwald Wilding for 2023. I wonder how many of the Ban the Prayers group of MHKs are going to be standing outside the Royal Chapel on Tynwald Day while prayers are said inside, says Juan. The people who wanted to get rid of prayers, and obviously the people who, some of the people who wanted to get the bishop out of Tynwald. 73.61% of permits were issued on the same day for work permits. 73%, which means, what's that? 26.39% weren't issued on the same day. The next crisis could be immigration if there are no work permits, so be careful what you wish for. Look at the situation in England. crisis could be immigration. Here's one in that says not only is the Isle of Man scrapping work permits, but they have scrapped the criteria for anybody working in a trade on government-funded works. Apparently, you must be in possession of a trade card. Also, in construction now, any employer can just employ staff on a self-employed basis, which costs the DHSS loss of funds due to lack of NI contributions. This has long been mentioned. That in some industries the tendency can be to self-employment and not actual employment. Well done to Mark for that level-headed statement about work permits and the need to disentangle work permits from immigration. We should all calm down.
You get more than you think, but all that you need when you
shop local with EVF.
Because your local EVF filling station isn't just a place for fuel, it's where you can get delicious food to go, chilled drinks, wines and beers, barbecue and summer essentials, from ice creams to surfboards, plus a great range of local products. Ellen Van In Fuels. Fill up, fuel up and get all you need to go. Open till late.
Shop local with EVF.
5.25% gross AER.
What?
5.25% gross AER on savings.
Really? That can only be on a Guernsey-based Skipton International fixed-rate savings account.
I thought that would get your attention. Yes, right now, Skipton International is offering a fixed rate of 5.25% gross AER when depositing £50,000 or more.
Call 01481 730 730 or find out more online at skiptoninternational.com.
Skipton International is licensed to take deposits by the Guernsey Financial Services Commission and is a participant in the Guernsey Banking Deposit Compensation Scheme. Details at dcs.gg. Terms and conditions apply.
Every drop is precious. Water. So easy to take it for granted, isn't it? Our reservoirs supply the needs of our island, but with the effects of climate change, that's becoming more challenging every year. Manx water is the only water we have, so we need to make every drop count by using it wisely, at home, in the garden and in general. Visit manxutilities.im to find out how you can begin smarter living, to lower energy bills and reduce your impact on our island environment.
Tomorrow, celebrate Tynwald Day here on Manx Radio. Our special programmes begin at 9:15 with a documentary looking at the visit of King George VI to Tynwald Day in 1945. We'll then be live at St John's to bring you coverage of all the ceremonial proceedings throughout the morning. From 2 o'clock, Howard Kane and Ruth Shimmin will bring you a flavour of the Fairfield through the afternoon, and at 5:30 we'll have a brand new edition of I Am One, our satirical look behind the scenes at the Nation Station. Tynwald Day, on air and online here on Manx Radio, tomorrow, the 5th of July.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Are you driving over the mountain at the moment? The matrix signs are saying there's fog on the mountain road, apparently. Barrule Park, Ramsey, Bagarrow, Hilbury, Albert Roads and Sulby are all saying there's fog on the mountain road, so if you're heading that way, do take care. Yes, it is true. Thank you, Doreen. Yes, it is true. A Radio Caroline DJ will be one of the guests of honour at Tynwald tomorrow. Roger Gale, or Sir Roger Gale as he is now, been a Tory MP in Kent since 1983, but was on Radio Caroline North in 1964, just after Caroline had started. He was a DJ on Radio Caroline North, went on to a glittering career within the BBC and children's television. He was at Thames Television, became a Tory MP in 1983, and he's here tomorrow. I've got tons of messages to get through, including the one that just says, can we say goodbye to the post office at Peel? Yes, it is. It's this Friday, isn't it? This Friday, the Peel post office closes Friday the 7th of July, 3:30, and reopens at the Spa on Monday, offering counter services and parcel collection. So goodbye to the goodbye and hello goodbye to the post office in Peel. And a message also saying apparently the One World Centre isn't going to be, the Global Village isn't going to be at Tynwald tomorrow. One World Centre has been facing funding challenges, particularly on core funding to cover staffing and the operational costs of the organisation. So they're not going to be there tomorrow. So that's a shame, really, because that was always great fun. Hi, Juan.
I hope you've got your suit all ready for tomorrow, Andy.
And it's ironed as well.
But that's more than what my shirt will be. Oh, you'll be out with the great and the good and the bad tomorrow, then, will you?
That's right. The good, the bad, and the... Well, anyway, you know what I mean.
The good, the bad, and the... Yes, I'm sitting down on Timble Fairfield now. Just been listening to the bands while I've been doing some work. And, so I believe... I'm just listening to a few points there because I haven't been on for a few days. But, firstly, I just wanted to say that the music festival at the weekend was excellent. Had any feedback from that up at Richmond Hill? It was absolutely... we've got some real good talent on this island with musicians, and fair play to Scott Bradshaw for putting it on. It was a really good festival.
Good.
And where's my point there?
Work permits.
Work permits. Thank you. I was talking to someone yesterday, and I think, I agree with a lot of the points that said there today about having work permits, and we need more people here. But just one point there yesterday, someone was appeared asking someone for accommodation, and they just landed on the island, tourist visa from Nigeria, very little money in their pocket, looking for cheap accommodation to stay because they were trying to get work. So I think we have to be very mindful of who's coming into the island. We're a very small island here, and I think someone said before, the Manxness is going to be broken down. And I'm not being, it's not racial or any way like that, but I think we do have to have some control on who comes onto a small island and who's working. Yes, we do need qualified people here, and we do need tradesmen. Well, I think we just have to be mindful of who's coming in.
It's part of a global trend, though, isn't it? I mean, there's an awful lot of migration across the world, probably more than there's ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. There is, but I'm also mindful of the fact that a lot of these governments are having to follow these ESGs that we've been talking about quite a lot, of economic social governance, and also bringing these people in and being made to bring these people in. It's kind of, if you don't let these people integrate into your society, then you're not going to be part of the bigger picture, and we're not going to give you business. So I think a lot of governments are getting bullied into this as well.
Well, I think that one point to be made, there's a thing in, I'm not a sociologist, but they say systems push down and people push up. And the fact is that, if the Manx culture is vibrant enough, and if Manx customs are vibrant enough, people will assimilate, but there has to be a Manx culture. We have to be proud of our heritage and our customs and how we live our life. And, that will filter down to people.
Well, hopefully it will. But I mean, obviously that depends on how much immigration you get, as to how much it changes your within society. We would hope we do keep that. I mean, we're talking about the trains and the horse trams recently and all that there stuff, and question is, should we be keeping it? Well, really, should there be a question there? We should be actually keeping that stuff because that is our identity, and we're on the borderline of losing a lot of that very quickly. I do think that we have a problem within the structure of government. If Charles Gardner's right in what he said last Friday, in that Timble has really no say in what Coleman does, I think we've got an issue there that the Secret Seven can do what they do and override anything that Timble say. What's the point then in voting these people in if they have no say and the feedback from the people and they not be able to do anything about it?
Well, you can have a say tomorrow if you want. No doubt they'll be wandering around the Fairfield tomorrow, June, so you can see somebody in a top hat, have a chat with them.
They'll probably avoid me like the plague. I believe the COVID vaccine injuries people are putting a petition of grievance in tomorrow, so that'll be interesting.
Apparently, that's the rumour anyway. Yes.
Yes, and I believe the Steam Packet boys have got to do 2 weeks on. Yes, I was talking to someone there who'd served a lot of time there, and so a lot of the old seamen are not happy about the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. It's a long time on the Force 9 Gale to have 2 weeks on board ship.
Okay, mine's a 99 with 2 flakes, by the way, Ewan.
Is it? Do you want sprinkles as well?
Thank you. Good to hear from you.
See you later, Andy.
5-1 on Manx Radio. I'm part of the Isle of Man's TT fan club, which has over 250,000 members, and few people who are interested in coming over next year for the first time are asking, does the Isle of Man have VOI e-scooters? VOI, is it, or VOI e-scooters that you can hire to get around us? All legislation being put forward to pass a bill to legalise e-scooters on the Isle of Man, which is great. And wouldn't it be great to trial e-scooters that you can hire, especially having some situated by the sea terminal, Oncombe Park, Douglas Tram and Train Station, by McDonald's or the Grandstand? I'm sure this would be very useful and fun for tourists and residents too. So do you think Manx Radio could potentially put forward this as an idea to DOI? Well, we could. How much notice they'd take of us, we don't know. Anyway, e-scooters for hire at TT next year. What do you think about this? It would also mean more people out of cars, motorbikes, using a more environmentally friendly method of transport of reducing CO2 emissions. Thank you for that. It's a good idea. And also, remember, tomorrow, live at Tynwald tomorrow morning, chatting to politicians. And the day after tomorrow, Thursday, Teresa Cope is on, the Chief Exec of Manx Care. So if you have anything you'd like to talk to Teresa Cope about, then by all means get in touch. Email to manninline@manxradio.com or call the answer phone on 682-6310. No One World Centre Global Village at Tynwald tomorrow, but it'll be interesting to see. We'll be talking to some of the petitioners at the Lich Gate tomorrow morning, talking to the politicians, and your host throughout the whole ceremony is John Moss. Thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones today, and thank you for your attention. I'm going out to gaze at the Manxman. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow at St John's.
WINT